Hi, folks. This is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, in talking with my buddy Dave Swanson this morning, I said, Dave, what is something else that you've observed right now that might be interesting to people on the radio? And he says, did you ever tell about the loon experience that we've had? I said, yeah, I've talked about the loons. And I think they're a great part of what we have here in the North Country. They're sort of an emblem of the wilderness. To hear their sound is amazing. But anyway, he said, what he saw, he was pretty interested in. He said the loons have started to migrate now off Cayuga Lake. And I said, well, how do you know this? And where do they go? And so we both looked up migration routes for loons. And, they can't stay here all winter. They can't they're not going to find fish through the ice. But one of the things that came out of this conversation, he said, is he noticed that the loons had formed a group and were migrating together. He said, I've never seen anything like that before. And loons are really supposed to be solitary beings. And we were sort of comparing it with the osprey migration that takes place every year in the fall. They leave our area, even though this is their home all summer long. They're living off fish. And loons are the same way. But one of the things that came out of this was the fact that he said, the young ones leave last. The adult, fully grown and older loons or ospreys will enter the migration route earlier than the young ones do. And I said, gee, that's really strange. You'd think the young ones have to learn where to go from the adults. But this is the same case with ospreys. And he told me about where he lives. They have ospreys on a pole right outside their home. And so they watch them every day. And he said one of the things that they noticed this year, and it really bugged them because they got so attached to these ospreys, is in the family. There were two young ospreys in the nest, and one of them left early. He said the smaller bird will leave earlier, and it left the other one in the nest. And the adults brought particles of rope back in to fortify their nest. And apparently the young one's legs got caught, or its wings or something, got caught in the ropes. And they said they saw it hanging upside down out of the nest. It had died. And I said, so what'd you do? He said, we called the electric company, and they weren't even aware that they were making poles with nesting stuff on top for the ospreys. But they came, and they tried to go up the pole to get the dead osprey down. And the workers had never done this before. And he said, all of a sudden, the one worker that was going up there to get that osprey, the adult osprey, started swooping down and swooping on it. And he says he got scared and he came back down off his ladder or whatever he was on. Eventually, they were able to take a big pole and reach it up and break that rope that osprey was hanging out of, and it fell to the ground. He said they left it there, the electric company, but he said one of the neighbors went and got it and buried it. But this is so interesting how the young sort of have their own migration plan, I guess. We become so attached to the things around us. And that's what I talk about fishing, how it gives you the opportunity to observe so much of the other life that shares our area. And I thought it was really interesting about that poor young osprey that got hung upside down off its nest, but how the young are sort of taken care of by the adults for so long, but then they leave to go to their winter grounds alone, and the young have to follow later. Something interesting that comes from our fishing world. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meissner with the North Country Fishing Report.